Okay, we probably, yes, 12:35. Let's get started. So let me set the stage for this, and I want this to be a discussion. And I don't want anyone to panic here because we're not going to do anything drastic anytime soon. But as most of you already know, we've been operating on a pretty much flat budget for the last 7 years, which I've been keeping track of it. And even with a 2% inflation rate, that is not sustainable in the long term. We end up getting down to the level of grants that we can't afford a postdoc and a student at the same time. And I'm worried. This meeting was triggered just because we had snowmass, but also because I'm worried about what inflation is going to go to next year. So we're probably going to get hit with a much bigger inflation, and the budget I'm going to get is not going to increase. So this is an argument I've been having with my bosses over many years here, saying that this program, the EPP experiment program, really should be bigger. We have proposals that are good that we're turning down, and that should put pressure back on the bosses at NSF to increase our budget, but it hasn't been doing that, and I'm not sure it's going to. So we have to figure out how to operate in this environment. And the biggest effect of this is that I have been overcommitting funds basically each year. And that means that for the next year, 80% of my available budget is already committed to awards that were made earlier. And that figure has been growing. And a healthy program would have that number at 60%. Now that, according to my bosses, 67% is more than norm for the whole physics division. And that makes sense because you would have 2/3 and 1/3 for the following year. Okay, so how do we get that 80% out year commitment down to say 70%? I'd be happy with that to start with. And many people, as you already know, I know some in this room have been hit even in the last 3 years that this kind of hit has happened before. But the only way to do this, if you're not going to get more money, is to reduce the overall program, okay, by 10%, say. And the only way to do that in a way that keeps the program healthy is to drop people that we've been funding for a long time. So how do we do that? We could think of doing something like a DOE portfolio review, but I have not gotten very good feedback from people who have gone through that process, and in particular from the DOE program directors. It didn't seem to help them that much. And it really depends on who you get as a panel to do this kind of review. So, okay, ideas. Somebody give me an idea how to fix this problem. Anyone want the mic? Yeah, thanks. Thank you. Somebody, Gustav? No? Come on, someone speak up. No, well, is it?
Well, I would have said the comparative review model that you just said didn't work very well seemed like a good model.
Sorry, I missed that. Was that Jeff?
Yeah, it was Jeff. I was just going to say my initial reaction was the comparative review seems like it makes sense. It's a relatively level playing field process. But our panels already do something a little bit like that, although not for the whole 3-year cycle. And then you just told us that maybe DOE didn't think they were as useful as it seemed like they would be.
Yeah, that's what I'm worried about. And you're right, our panels do that. Well, for not everyone maybe knows all the inner workings of the panel, but after ad hoc reviews, the mail-in reviews, and the panel discussion, the panel ranks the proposals from the top to the bottom without regard to the funding possibilities. And then I have to figure out with my budget how to stretch that budget down to fund as many people as we can. And that stretching is what results in me overcommitting money for the next year. Okay, so in other words, I'm stretching it too far.
So, I mean, this is really just another question, but both the DOE.
Sorry, can we ask speakers to identify themselves
Oh,
if they're in
this
the
is
room?
Ed Blucher. So both the DOE, HEP, and EPP and the NSF fund similar research, and by an accident of how people started off their careers, they're funded by one or the other. Frequently at rather different levels. Have you thought in trying to address this problem at having some closer collaboration with DOE in how to fund the full program across both agencies?
Truthfully, I have not. That isn't entirely a ridiculous question to ask. I'm not sure actually how we would carry that out. We do business so differently.
Yeah, no, I know but in some ways it's funny that.
But yeah, I mean, we cooperate together on the things like the Halloumi upgrade, right? That work was divided up. So it's not out of the question. Yeah, can you turn it on? I don't know if I should be masked or not here.
I mean, I don't know whether I am out. Sorry. This is Marina Artuso from Syracuse University. Are you just trying to figure out how to squeeze us of 10% of our resources fairly, or maybe we can discuss also some ways in which we can do advocacy for try to figure out some other ways of funding our program? Because if we're speaking about the PI program, most of this money is students and postdoc. And so one of the mission stated in multiple messages of NSF is just to develop the new STEM workforce to bring the society forward. So, and this seems to be resonating also at the level outside the physics community. So, I mean, I'm really concerned, apart from trying to see how we split that pie and we fight against each other, on how we can really maintain sustainability in science education if we are squeezed at that level.
Yeah, so that's a restatement of the problem. I don't see the solution there. I mean, yeah, we do want to stay to our mission of building the next generation workforce and supporting research at undergraduate institutes, all these things that are important to the foundation as a whole.
But but my point was that could we as a community try to develop a more sustained effort to advocate for more resources for the field?
Yeah, so that would be good if it could make that successful, but I don't know. Yeah. Can we get the mic here? Yeah.
Hello? Oh, Daniel Nagasawa, National Academy of Sciences. Can you elaborate? You said you received poor reaction to adopting a community, a comparative review process. Could you elaborate as to the exact criticisms?
Yeah, okay. No, it wasn't the comparative review process. It was a portfolio review process. That was
Yes, can you elaborate
that was
as
a
to?
special program they had. Well, I think, they picked experts in the field and they looked at where DOE was spending money and they said their conclusion was they're spending it correctly and they don't see anywhere to cut. So it was not useful. And I think if we did this, people would look at this and say, oh yeah, we're spending a lot of money on Atlas and CMS, but that's where our opportunities are right now. So we're going to continue doing it. Yeah, over here.
Yeah, so you talk about the existing program have the budget issue, but may I know the attitude of NSF?
Can the speaker please identify?
Yeah, so my name is Jianming Bian from UC Irvine. So my question is, so may I know the attitude of NSF or your project for the future experiment at under designing? So there are two cases, for example. One is a bigger one, say like Hyper K. So in the Japan, and also as I see you have phaser, but the next generation of this forward physics facility called FPF, that's relatively small. So may I know? So if since we have the budget issue, so may I know the attitude for the future plan? Is it okay to we apply and just try, or it's absolutely
Yeah,
not.
but yeah, this is a good point. I mean, look at the small parts of this pie. That's with the 20% left over my budget. That's the only place where new projects can get started. And that's why we want to get that down to, 30% of my budget, so we can reward people who come up with something new and something interesting. And that's really hard to do when we don't have much budget left after we feed the big pies there. Okay, anyone on Zoom want to say anything? Oh, Michael, Mike Sokoloff, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I had a question. So I'm looking at your pie here. Does that include both base grants and the M&O programs for the various LHC experiments?
It does not include the M&O program, no. This is just base.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Yeah, Mike. Yeah, thanks.
Just to follow up a little bit on what I asked.
Again, please identify yourself.
Mike Tutts, Columbia, sorry.
Thanks, Mike.
I asked it the last time whether you knew anything about the sort of ordinary graduate fellowship. You could imagine that could relieve some pressure. And do you know whether in EPP we sort of get our share, or is it worse?
So that's a good question. And I think the answer is that we don't get our share. And I could never figure out why. And that's why I volunteered to be on the panel last year in order to try to get some insight into that. And it's pretty opaque, to tell you the truth. There weren't a lot of candidates that were relevant to EPP. So I don't know if the message isn't getting out to apply to those, or I don't think they're being, excluded by some kind of principle.
Yeah, it's not like they say, oh, that's a large group, they got a lot of
No,
money. And
they don't do
we
that, no.
care.
But also, if you note, I pointed out on one of my other slides yesterday about other opportunities for getting grad students. So especially if they're, a minority or special category that doesn't underrepresented candidate category, you could get funding for that. That's outside of EPP program. That helps a lot. And we have been successful in doing that on a number of grad student proposals this year and the last year. Okay. So what else can we say? Yeah, I don't see any brilliant ideas of how we're going to solve this problem other than being really harsh. Yeah. I mean, I certainly always try to get more money into the program, but like I said, I have not been successful. Yeah.
Thank you. This is Dave Schmitz from Chicago. So just following up on that last little comment there about trying to get more money into the program, and also the earlier question that this represents just the base grants of university groups. Maybe this is just me not knowing enough about kind of how things work and how these decisions are made. But do you know where money is being lost to? Is it like other new initiatives in NSF that have kind of eaten?
Yeah, I don't know if you saw my slides from yesterday, but I showed you there's some, overall 10% budget increase in NSF overall, but it's 5.8% in the physics division, and it's 0 in the EPP program. So it's going to other programs. And at NSF wide, that big 10% increase mostly went into the new directorate, the TIP program, which could in time benefit our community also in various connections with detector development and various AI quantum initiatives that could have a spin-off into EPP programs. So we'll look for that opportunity. I could say, so I had a discussion with Steve Ritz, I'll drop his name. He was saying that you should really fight this, and you have good argument for saying you have a strong proposal pressure get more funding. And I said, okay, well, I'll ask him to come and give a talk and so see how far that goes. But, you know, we do have a story to tell here that this is people who rate really well in our proposal review, and yet we can't fund them. Certainly not at the level that we want to. Yeah. Yeah. Oh, okay. John's got the mic. Go ahead.
John Parsons, Columbia. So yeah, just, I mean, when, as has been pointed out, when you look at the pie chart, I mean, it's striking, of course, a lot of the money is going to the LIC, but on the other hand, the foundation just put in $150 million and then MREFC for the upgrade. So it seems, I mean, I'm sure you're using this argument, obviously, but it just seems sort of a little strange that they've made this huge investment and at the same time, they're basically trying to shrink the whole program. Because in the end, as was pointed out by Rin, I mean, most of the money we're discussing here is students and postdocs. So why are we doing this upgrade if we're not going to have students and postdocs that we're going to train to do this
Absolutely.
instrumentation work and then reap the physics? So to fund a whole bunch of engineers and technicians and not give any physicists to work with them, obviously, is really presumably not what the foundation wants, but somehow that's not being persuasive. I'm wondering why, if you have some feeling why that's not a
Well,
persuasive
okay,
argument.
I can tell you that it has been successful the last 7 years because, you know, I said we have to overcommit the money because that keeps some of these groups that are doing crucial work for the MREFC project. So that does work, but you know, it can't work forever. But yeah, I mean, the commitment for the MREFC, in order to fully benefit from it, we have to do research on the data that comes out of that for 10 years, 15 years after that. So it doesn't end when the MREFC funding stops. Okay, Marion, I'll get you to you.
Graham Wilson, Kansas. How do the NSF grants compare to DOE, and could that be used as an argument for increasing NSF grants?
I don't think that would be very convincing. I'm not sure if there is a difference between them. I haven't done the comparison, but I mean, I certainly know. So how many dollars per PI per year go to someone who's like working on an LHC experiment, which takes more than someone working on a Fermilab experiment, just for travel and cost of living adjustments at CERN. But I think it's comparable in DOE. I mean, I used to be DOE funded, so when we went through the same business. Marina.
Okay, so following up on the thing that I said before, it may sound pie in the sky, but given the fact that in essence, I think that we are struggling for survival, I think that perhaps it would be useful to see, to examine sort of like what the advocacy that didn't work before, and perhaps to try to identify some other ways to pursue our advocacy, and really who should we address our things to, like using the example of our dealing with politicians. Sometimes we are not that effective because we do our yearly visit to Washington and the real lobbyists are there, like camping in front of the office of the politician. So clearly, we don't have the resources to be at that level. But I really think that in this kind of funding scenario, this becomes really part of our job because, so I mean, having some sort of like, try to organize ourselves in such a way that we can articulate our voice. And in the end, I think that, I mean, and the other thing which I was thinking is that the advantage that NSF has is in all our proposals, we have to write compelling, broader impact. And so we can weave this stuff into a story which should appeal not only to the aficionados of Atlas, EMS, or HCB, but really to a large, broader audience.
Yeah, so I think that's good, but we have to be careful on these like visits to congressional aides and things that you don't want to appear to be going there begging for money. You want to go there and tell them how good your science is. And that gets the message through. I mean, I think that's what, you know, Harvey pushes this and Steve Ritz pushes this. But if you just go and say, my science is the greatest and you should get more money to it, that's not gonna work.
Yeah, so I mean, I was thinking that we could leverage as a community on the most successful broader impact statement that we have put together, because they're also a message which is not only for our peers, but for a broader audience.
Yeah, I mean, we could make a better case that NSF is really doing some great science here and they need to continue it. Yeah.
Jim, can you talk a little bit about how EPP co-funds grants that go through other directorates? So as you know, most of my funding comes through OAC one way or another, rather than directly from EPP, but I'm sure that MPS co-funds substantially, or that's what I imagine, and the multidisciplinary, what's it called? The new director, the multidisciplinary something or other activities is one of the few areas of the NSF which got a big bump.
Yeah, yeah. So
And I know that some of my awards are tagged as getting funding from them.
yeah, so we do successfully get money from other directorates to help us, and you're a case in point. And then there are many cases where we get co-funding from SIZE and OAC, because one of OAC's missions is to make sure that they supply the computing that's needed to get the science done that's funded by the rest of the NSF. So in particular, for an MREFC, they want to make sure that the computing is taken care of. So that's, that's the kind of benefit you get from OAC money. But we've had other cases from SIZE, and also if you looked at my plot for the MPS overall funding, it showed an increase in OMA, the Office of Multidisciplinary Activities. And that has come back to EPP program and other areas in physics quite a bit in the last few years. Mostly that has been for increasing diversity and education. So grad student stipends and these special programs like MPS Ascends and MPS Leaps. So there are ways.
Are there other programs? So I know about OAC programs and that erupts my interest, but are there programs in other directorates where higher energy physicists, say, doing detector development might look for opportunities?
Yeah, I don't know of a specific program that can do that, but yeah, there could be programs in materials research, for example, that could be related to new detector technologies, and certainly lots of quantum sensor technology could fit into that category, but I don't know of a specific program that's working on that direction. Richie has a mic.
Mine just goes back a little bit to the conversation we were having a moment ago. And
Again, can you identify yourself for those of us in Zoom world?
sure, this is Richie Patterson. And my question is just whether you, as a close watcher of all of this, have recognized the way that you would make the case for particle physics.
Make the case for what? I didn't hear the last.
For particle physics.
Yeah. So, well, yeah, I think the thing to say is that this is, the highest priority science drivers that was identified 6 years ago, and it still is. And we want to push for that. So the whole LHC program, which dominates this EPP, is clearly in the right direction in my mind. And since we put a big investment of an MREFC into it, we need to reap the benefits of that.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Hi. So my name is Sudhir Malik, and I'm from University of Puerto Rico. Jim, I don't have a solution for this problem. Of course, it's a difficult problem to address, but I guess I guess it's important to address, the suffering that happens if the funding is cut, right? I think it's like on or off kind of thing for some institutes. For smaller institutes, if they don't get funding, then they are lost, sort of killed, right, in a way. But big institutes may suffer some loss, but they are there. Like, for example, on CMS, if you do not get funding, then your authorship is, removed and stuff. So I think if some of those things can be addressed by the collaborations themselves, it might help a little bit, because let's say you say like, my funding is cut, right? Then the thing is like, I'm dead in that sense, because I had one postdoc, I had lots of students thriving very well, but like, it's like cutting me at the very root. But the thing is that there may be some midway solution that collaboration perhaps can figure out and help. There could be common resources that can help, in some way. I don't have a solution, but I'm thinking that what you're looking for is like a real situation where there is a cut. So what is the best way so that people can, survive and yet contribute? I would say that maybe collaborations should find some solution in this way. They can really help collectively.
So I agree. And I think that's why I want to have this discussion here, is I don't want to make a program that cuts everyone by 10%, for example, because it'll hurt some people more than it'll hurt others. And particularly small universities, which NSF is quite proud of supporting. And that is one of the keys to our workforce development program, where we get a lot of good students from small universities that wouldn't make it, if their funding was cut by 10%.
Yeah.
So somehow we have to preserve, the pain threshold all around. Yeah.
So is anybody monitoring the Zoom? Because we have several hands.
Okay, sorry, not very well. My back's to it. Okay, go ahead, Sal.
Yeah, is it possible for us to give comments or questions or, well, really suggestions offline? Because I think, I'm going to be honest, I think there's going to have to be some hard decisions that have to be made, and maybe we're not comfortable
Gordon,
discussing.
somebody has set up a Google Docs that's referenced on this, on Indico, and you can put in comments there and questions.
Yeah, it would be helpful if this was anonymous, actually.
Helpful if what?
If it was anonymous and not visible to others.
Anonymous. Oh, okay.
There may be some contentious things that people may suggest that may not be very popular, but they may actually be not without their merits.
Okay, maybe there's a way we can set up, but we don't have the technology set up for that right now.
I mean, or we can just email you, I think is probably.
You can certainly call me anytime, yeah, but that's not anonymous either.
No, but I think, I don't know, anyway.
Okay. All right, and with a couple more hands on Zoom, Doug Benjamin.
Yeah, Doug Benjamin of Brookhaven. How much is summer salary in that pie for tenured faculty? I'm not saying you zero out summer salary, but maybe creative funding might protect the younger people.
So I probably could get that number, but I don't have it. And if I did get it, I wouldn't be able to show it here. I mean, your point being that there's too many fat.
No, it's not the point. It's just you have a 10% problem to solve and you have to be creative about it. It'll be very hard in the short term to grow the pie. And that you have to think of a way to keep the field healthy.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You mentioned it with small institutions.
Yeah.
5% of a small institution could knock them offline.
Yeah. Okay. No, that's fair.
So
Gustav wants to comment on this.
yeah, so this is an interesting point, right? Because NIH and DOE.
Again, can you identify yourself, please?
Yeah, sorry, Gustav Boymans, Columbia. So you know that DOE, it's not a cap because they're not allowed to impose a cap, but they revise summer salary budget downward to meet a certain number. And so the difficulty with that is that it's a universal number nationwide. And so it doesn't take into account local cost of living. And so it hits people on the coasts very hard and basically doesn't hit people who live in cheaper areas where the salaries tend to be lower. So I'm not saying this isn't something that NSF could explore, but it's not only very difficult to implement, it has, I don't know what there might, this is, since you would do this, you have to look at what the rules are coming from above as well.
Okay, but I
It
can
might
give you,
not be so easy.
I can give you an example though. So I know that there is another program in physics that does just that, the theory program. So EPP theory has a cap on summer salary.
Yeah, so they have a downward revision, I assume. Caps aren't allowed as far as.
Yeah,
I
whatever.
understand, but
I
yeah,
don't know how they
whatever
word it,
call
but there's
Yes.
effectively a cap.
Okay.
Yeah.
And is it a flat cap nationwide?
Yep.
Yes.
Yep.
So-
Mike, on the same topic, we have a few other hands too. Right? Okay, Janet, do you had your hand up? But now I don't see it.
Yeah, I took it down. I
Okay.
guess what I was wondering about had to do with this new directorate and how well we could actually already start lobbying to argue that we do things that are well aligned with, the goals of that directorate, to see if we could build bridges there to try to bring more money in. Because I would think we are well aligned with that.
Yeah, I think that's a very good suggestion. I haven't explored it. Of course, the tip is so new, but I think that's a great idea, and we really should try to do something to cash in on that because there's definitely going to be money going there.
I think we might be able to help you with that, right? We could work, you can bring us in if you even need us to, even by Zoom, to try to make a case for it, because I think there's a lot we do. Okay, thanks.
Okay, that's a good idea. I think we should think more about that and get something concrete in place and maybe go make a presentation to them. Okay, Mike wants to.
Yeah, I mean, related to that, just as a reminder, the NSF responds to proposals by PIs. So if we think that there is an opportunity in another directorate, it's the PI's responsibility to identify how that works and then talk to the different program officers and write proposals. My experience working with people from different directorates is that program officers are generally very willing to help. But the PI needs at some level to take the initiative. It's not going to be that they're going to transfer money from their program into EPP. They're going to respond to an individual proposal and then they'll negotiate with EPP. So it's up to the individual PIs to come up with ideas.
Yeah. May I explain though?
Please.
This directorate is a little bit different because it is only just coming into being. So now is a real opportunity for us to move in there and say, we want to build these bridges that might be harder to do in a program that has existed for a long time and is really filled up also.
Yeah. Okay, I think, Janet, we should pursue that in some way. Maybe we should have an email exchange over this. Mike's been waiting. Mike Tutz.
In the spirit of sort of trying to help your advocacy within NSF, I think it was useful, for example, when Franz Cordova came and visited CERN.
Yeah.
Should we be doing the same thing, trying to get the current NSF director, for example, there or whatever other facilities?
Yeah, I think we should. We need to put that map in front of him. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Okay, anyone else on Zoom? I don't see hands. Anyone in the room? Okay. So I'm not surprised that we didn't come up with a solution here, but we have some ideas I think that we should pursue further. So I thank you everybody for that.
Jim, can I make one more comment, I guess?
Please do.
So as a field, we've done a very good job lobbying Congress and getting more money for DOE. Very little of which has gone into research. Most of it's going into other areas. And the real problem is that the NSF budget as a whole is just marginally keeping up with inflation. And if EPP is going to grow, it's only going to happen if the NSF budget grows substantially.
Yep.
And perhaps, obviously NSF program officers cannot participate in lobbying activities, but perhaps what we need to do, those of us who have NSF funding, for example, would be to talk with colleagues from other disciplines and present and actively explain to our members of Congress what it is we do and why it's valuable and why it's important to more than keep up with inflation. And every few years, there's a bill, but not funding, which supports that endeavor. And just remember that we cannot advocate for EPP within MPS within the NSF.
Correct.
The NSF budget, except for the MREFCs, is a single line item as far as Congress is concerned. And the NSF management has worked very, very hard over a long period of time to maintain the right to allocate funds at its discretion. And I think we want to support that. So I don't think we want to be pushing our program as being special at the NSF. I think that if we're going to advocate, we need to advocate for the NSF program as a whole, and we're probably best off doing it in conjunction with our colleagues from other disciplines.
But so I think that's no different than what Harvey Newman and the various users associations do every year. And I think that program is good, and we should just, push our group here to be involved in that and make sure that.
Right. But what I'm saying is that that's specific to particle physics across the DOE and NSF.
Yeah.
But in terms of NSF funding, I think that we might want to work with our colleagues from other areas of science that are supported by the NSF.
Okay,
And
that's
work
a good.
with our university administrations to help educate Congress as to why what we're doing is really important for the national economy long term.
Yeah, okay, that's a good point. Other comments? Okay. I think we'll close out the meeting then. And again, I thank everyone for participating and discussing, and certainly feel free to call me up or email me to get further details and express further opinions that you don't want to do in public. Yeah, yes. Okay, thanks again, everybody, and everybody on Zoom.
Thanks very much, Jim.